Hi, so it's a warm welcome. My name's Richard Bartlett. The company's Export Unlocked Limited. Just a bit of background about Export Unlocked and myself. Lots of many years of experience in international trade, logistics, freight forwarding, customs, all key areas when it comes to moving goods, exporting, importing on strategy, research, documentation, and working all internationally, not just here in the UK, but also internationally. Today, we're going to be talking about topics. So, on our new YouTube channel, we're going to be doing little snippets, keep them short and sweet, but hopefully engaging that you can enjoy and also get some knowledge and some informative information that you can use, hopefully, as you start your journey either in your global expansion as an exporter or an importer, or you're just about to start that journey because one of the key areas we're going to talk about today is Incoterms, and Incoterms does create a lot of confusion. So I'm going to just keep on certain topics here. So today we're going to be talking about X works and the meaning of X works and what it means. Like I said, we've been training for many years in international trade with lots and lots of companies around the world. Um, just some snippets here, not just here in the UK on Incoterms. We've delivered all around the world and just recently in Saudi Arabia, which was just recent, and back out there in the next few weeks. Also in Switzerland with the WTO, Qatar, and also in Belfast, Ireland, also Newry, Scotland, UK, Wales, all over the place. So again, Nigeria. So about 1,000 courses of training, which is always useful, and it always gives you a good understanding of how businesses are operating. Some operate in different ways, and it's finding that right balance to make sure it works, particularly for you. And like I say, X Works to me is always the one that confuses many businesses. For me, it's very straightforward, but obviously I'm looking from the outside and I'm not on the inside. So again, we'll talk about some key areas and some areas that you should be thinking about when you're exporting. The challenges, what are there? Now, obviously, it's new, the YouTube channel. We recognise there's a real space in the market here on international trade. Lots of people do lots of articles and videos, some great videos out there, what people do. And we're not in particular into detail, and we're going to be doing key things on certain topics from starting your journey to established journey, from customs to today on Incoterms. We're going to be doing some international trade podcasts, some discussions, and it'll be very engaging. So we'd love for you to press that subscribe and keep subscribing and keep engaging and enjoying what we're going to be delivering. And hopefully you'll find it interesting. We're not the one in the mill. We won't go down in detail. It has to be, enjoyable and with lots of tips in there. So hopefully I can give you the tips. Been in the industry for over 35 years. So probably now got a vast and good understanding of how trade works, not just here, being based in the UK, but internationally. It's the same challenges people have. And it's how you overcome that and how you give people that experience and that confidence to really expand your journey. Please never stop your journey and your expansion if you want to and you feel you have a product that you can sell internationally. Please do it. There's nothing to stop you. In my experience, the people who do it well and the people who understand compliance and Incoterms and all the areas of international trade tend to be the ones that really expand very quickly and very successfully. I'm not saying that some people, it happens, but they don't have much compliance in the background. So again, these channel or the channel that we're going to be creating here is very much on these key areas. So we talk about lots and lots of different topics. And please feel free to send messages and let us know. Please try not to be too negative because obviously we're here to try and support businesses, and we'll try and support businesses the best way we can because we feel there's a real need here and a real need, particularly in the UK, as the UK starts to expand internationally around the world. But the topic we're going to be talking about today is Incoterms. And Incoterms, like I said, I've been delivering Incoterms for a long time, particularly Incoterms of 2020. When we saw the changes from the old Incoterms, they tend to be changed every 10 years, over the last probably 40, 50 years. They're delivered by the ICC. And Incoterms really best way to explain it is who takes the responsibility to, when you've sold your goods, to pick up the goods and deliver the goods. Who takes that responsibility and who takes on that cost, the risk, and everything associated with it? And Incoterms can differ on the different Incoterms you use. So it's very important to understand which Incoterm you've agreed to and why you've agreed to it and what the implications are if anything happened. That's, it's really important. Particular, I find, is that particularly in any international trade or any international trade department, depending on the size, there's a whole vast of people involved in the kind of agreement, from the agreement to doing the quotation to getting the purchase order to then the physical person who's physically moving the goods. We call it the jigsaw effect, where the jigsaw has to be, it's like the pieces all have to be put together, because if they're not put together, things go wrong. And we tend to find that the Incoterms generally tends to be agreed at this point that you inquire purchase order. And that tends to go in most businesses to the sales department. So the sales department play an important role because obviously they're there to expand the business. But in a lot of cases, from a sales role, it's understanding when you're doing that agreement or when you're doing that quote, have you included all the correct things? And Incoterm is normally a key area that is normally agreed. Now, if you can imagine, from a sales point, a sales is there to sell the goods. He's there to expand your goods and expand globally. He's not going to be an expert in international trade. Some are. I'm not saying everybody isn't, but some are not. So they're going to agree to things that they might not necessarily understand what they're agreeing to. And there's nothing wrong with that, but it's very important for them to understand, or as a team, to understand the risk involved when you agree to something. And again, the challenge, obviously, as you can imagine, you've got a big order on, a buyer, so a buyer who's importing the goods, who wants to import the goods from you, he'll get the best deal he can. He won't want to take too many risks. He might want to take on the transport and everything because he can get it at a reduced price. But what impact does that have on you as a business? So it's very important. Or you might prefer to do it. So again, we're going to talk about inquiry purchase order. Normally, when the inquiry comes in, you would normally then get a purchase order, and the purchase order will come to a department. It's very important to check what's on the purchase order. There's key information on there, and we're going to talk about this in a bit more detail as we go along in our YouTube channel. But it's very important to understand the Incoterm will be on there. And if it's not listed on there, somebody has to agree to it, because ultimately it's the agreement between who collects the goods and takes the responsibility. Very important. And there's 11 Incoterms in there. So you've got Ex Works, FCA, FAS, FOB, you've got CFR, CIP, CIF, all these terms that you've probably heard of, to DAP, DDP, DUP, all these different terms that you've probably think, what do they mean? So again, we're going to cover each topic in little snippets. So again, it just makes it easier to understand. But it's very important when the salesperson is selling, because he likes to just sell from the factory. And you can understand that, because he doesn't want to take the responsibility or tell the buyer or the potential new customer, yeah, come and get the goods, it's your responsibility. We'll sell you the goods, this is our price, we'll invoice you. And that's the key. He will invoice. He will at that point want to invoice the job once the customer, or once you've confirmed the order that you can produce, or you've got the goods in stock that you can deliver the goods. And then it's up to the buyer then to arrange the transport. And really, you don't care how long that takes, because ultimately you've invoiced it at that point. So Ex Works plays a role for a salesperson that he can get it invoiced, gets it on his books, and particularly when it's towards the end of a month. So when it's on the 29th or 30th of the month, under Ex Works, you can get that invoiced out in that month. So if you are giving some credit to somebody, or you've agreed some credit, you can get it invoiced in the month that you want to get it invoiced in, because normally people work end of month. So again, you're getting that within that period. If you don't, and it's then being collected the week after, and a lot of buyers will play savvy with this, they'll probably want to collect it the first week of the month, because they might have credit terms for you. So they might get an extra 30 days end of month. So they might say, well, we don't owe you. If you've been collected on the 4th or 5th, we won't physically pay you. It's probably till the 15th, 16th of the following month. So again, it's very important to understand how it works under Incoterms, because you won't invoice that, don't forget, till the end of the month, and then it becomes payable. So again, it's understanding this, because most companies work on, we all said 30 days, but as we know, some companies work on 45 days, some 60 days, some 90 days if you're doing international trade. So it's very important from an invoice point of getting that out. But it's again understanding what involves in an Incoterm and why Ex Works plays an important role. In Incoterms, in a very clear understanding, Incoterm really is the decision that once you've sold the goods, who takes on the responsibility and obligation. And you either have that or your buyer has it. Now, Ex Works purely means selling Ex Works is that you're passing all that responsibility to your importer or your buyer. And your buyer then has the responsibility to arrange the transport. So he will pay for the freight costs with the freight company, and he will arrange to collect the goods, Secondly, he will also be responsible for doing the customs entry to leave the UK. And if I just talk purely on the UK here, but again, this could be anywhere, he'll take the responsibility to do the customs declaration and have all that ready so he can get the goods leaving and shipped. But you have a responsibility from yourself because you imagine under Ex Works. Ex Works purely means that when you've sold them goods, you've sold them on the basis that the customer is responsible to come in and collect the goods, but with the best will in the world, you're not going to allow somebody to come in and collect 2 pallets in your warehouse. You're not going to allow somebody to come in and use your forklifters in the driver. And the driver has no intention from a freight forwarding point that he wants to come in and load the goods, even though sometimes he's forced to do that. He's not really insured to do that. And under Ex Works, really, it's the obligation to your buyer to do the actual loading. We all know that doesn't happen. We know you actually physically load them goods yourself unless it's courier, or you might leave it at reception and you'll load it onto the van, DHL, DPD, UPS, these kind of companies. But a freight forwarder who's collecting 1, 2, 3, 4 pallets, it'll be his responsibility to collect it, and that doesn't happen. It's also their responsibility, the customs entry. So how do you know that when the freight forwarder asks you for the commercial invoice? For you to, in the packing list. How do you know what he's putting on that customs entry? Because if you're not getting a copy of that customs entry, how do you know what values, etc., has been put on there? Yes, you like to hope, and we all like to hope that they're copying it from the commercial invoice that you've sent over. But how do you know unless you check it? Again, from a VAT, remember when you're exporting, or sorry, when you're invoicing a customer or the buyer, you're invoicing in the value of the goods without VAT because it's an international trade. And what happens with that VAT is when them goods then arrive into his country, he under his customs entry then will pay the VAT at the rate it is in that country. So he wouldn't pay the UK VAT because there's no VAT as it leaves the UK. So a customs entry will be done. All the information, the customs valuation will be put on there. And then when it arrives into the country of importer, in their country, say in Germany, France, they'll have their different VAT, or if it's going to the US, they'll have taxes and other things. It's then the importer's responsibility to pay them charges. So again, it's very important to understand that. But when it leaves the UK, there's no VAT. Well, how do you know that, first of all, them goods are going where they're going to? Very important, because they could be being moved somewhere within the UK and there's no VAT on it. There's VAT not being paid. So again, from a compliance point, it's very important to understand that. Also, do you get a copy of the customs entry when you're doing Ex Works? Most people don't. So if you have a customs audit, and we see lots and lots of these now here in the UK, as it's a country now on its own, and it has its own customs territory. Customs officers now will expect to see all your documentation. And included in that, they'll expect to see the purchase order, the confirmation order. They'll expect to see the commercial invoice, the packing list, and the customs entry for proof that the goods have been exported. They'll also expect to see the document to prove that the goods have been delivered. Do you have that? Probably not in a lot of cases. So again, it's very, very important to understand that, because if you don't do that, you're going to create yourself major, major problems future, down the line, 2, 3 years. And what happens, say, and I hear this a lot where customers say, yeah, it's Ex Works, all right, we'll get it from the freight forwarder. But what happens if you don't work with that freight forwarder anymore? What happens if that freight forwarder unfortunately goes bust, or he gets taken over, or whatever, and then you have to, 2 years, you get an audit coming in from HMRC here in the UK or anywhere around the world, and they're asking you for the documents, but you can't get them documents because that company or your contact's not there anymore. Well, how would you get that? You're non-compliant. So they have every right then to make you non-compliant, and it can cause not just cost, but it takes a lot of time. A lot of time to get all the paperwork and everything together. So it's very important to understand that role. And Ex Works really creates a lot of issues within yourself, because if you change your Ex Works to another term where you have more control, you'll have proof of all that documents. So it's very important, if you are doing Ex Works, somehow you are getting them documentation from your buyer or from your freight forwarder, but he doesn't have an obligation to give you that. Don't forget, he's paying for that, not you. He's taking that obligation on. So again, it's very important to understand. So some of the key things we'll take out of today from an Ex Works. Ex Works plays a great role for a sales guy. It helps him. It helps him export his goods quickly. Well, not quickly, but it helps him get them goods invoiced. He doesn't take any responsibility. He doesn't have to worry about things. But ultimately, on the second part, if you're an export shipping department, and like we said, you've got a lot of problems because you've got to be able to prove that you're exporting them goods to where you're exporting them to. You've got all the documentation, all stored. So HMRC, if they need to check, can come and check. And also, another key thing is if you're doing Ex works, how do you know where the goods are going to? Now, I'm not saying anything happens, but in international trade, them goods could be sold on. So somebody could buy them from you, then sell them on, but they could be going to countries that wouldn't necessarily receive your cargo as a full compliance. So they might want certain documentation to be able to be received into that country. They might have lower values on there. So there's lots of things to think about. There might be controls there. You might be going into things like Russia, where we've got the Russia-Ukraine situation at the moment. That's probably a good one because everybody sees that on the news. You know, he could be sending them goods into it. I'm not saying he is, but that's what could happen. And when you're doing exports, you don't have any of that control. You have no proof of where them goods are going to. So that's a key thing to understand. You know, they could be being shipped to countries that shouldn't be receiving your goods from the UK, and they could be being on-sold from another country. So again, they're counteracting them restrictions for goods leaving the UK going into there. And a good example of that is probably if you think about something like Trump situation, if there's taxes and tariffs, if you move the goods to one country, then ship it from that country, are you avoiding certain things? You're not, but people think that. So again, it's very important to understand that and have some control. So Ex Works has a role, plays a good role, but it also comes with a lot of compliance issues. And I would say really consider moving your terms from Ex Works to the next term we're going to be talking about on the next program is FCA. And why FCA to me is a great term to use because it takes a lot of responsibility away from you because it's where people get confused. You don't still have to do the transport or anything. The only responsibility you have now, when we look at FCA, is just different obligations and responsibilities, but much better for you. So again, we'll talk about that on the next one. So again, the quick, we don't want to go on and on and on with them. Otherwise you get bored, and we all get bored, don't we? We all watch videos and things we all kind of get obsessed with. We can't help ourselves. But this is the reason we've held out doing YouTube channels. But we really think there's a need there because we think that a lot of things are not explained the way they should be explained correctly or not correctly, because that's the wrong thing to say because people are very good on here. But it's having the language that people understand the language what's being used. And I think that's really important. And we'll be having lots and lots of things on here. So please subscribe. We're going to be doing lots more on here. You know, I know they're difficult subjects, but as long as we get them right, as long as we understand them, we can really start our export journey. We'll talk about lots of different things as we go along. We do have different things. We do qualification programs, we do diagnostics. There's lots of things we can do, and they're on here. So we just always put them at the back. If you want to get more into the supply chain, sustainability, export procedures, customs, all this international trade, your supply chain, all these kind of areas. We cover AO, all the different things within an endorsed certification we do at the moment. We either do a 6-module or a 15-module or one module. You don't have to do all thing. You can do flexible. You can do one at a time if you want, or just one if there's a particular one. So again, please reach out and visit our website. It's very important to see that. And that's just the diagnostics. So again, thank you for joining us today. And again, please watch this space. We have got a new newsletter. So again, please subscribe to that. And again, please look out and you'll see a lot more things coming onto the YouTube channel. So again, thanks for watching. And it's Richard from Export Unlocked. Hopefully see you all again. Thank you. Bye-bye.